Welcome back. Today we will talk about bioethics topic. The sources of this lecture is the Global Biorisk Management Curriculum Library from Sandia National Laboratory. Our purposes from this lecture that each individual are responsible for their own behavior. The ethical conduct is not only represent the personal integrity, but it also reflects the integrity of their institution. And the bioethics is not a separated task to research, but an integrated part to all activity. In the absence of legal constraint, the ethical conduct is still important as a social benefit. Various committees and reports try to solve the problem of misapplied and misuse of biological agents. So they have looked for many possible solutions. First, they start with understanding the risk. Consider how otherwise benign biological research may be misused. And the most useful solution was by establishing bioethic principle field to deal with misapplied use of biological agents. Implementation of codes of ethics, it's very similar to our behavior conduct, like how to deal with situation in a lecture by your cell phone, how to be quiet in the library, but what is the acceptable and unacceptable behavior in biological field? What are the consequences of the code if it's broken? And if there is any trade-off for adhering to the code of behavior? And how bioethics solve this problem in case of misapplied for biological agent? Okay. Regarding to the WHO, they define bioethics is the promotion of responsible and good research practice. So it's the provision of tool and the practice of the scientists and institution that allow to discuss knowledge, solving a problem in open atmosphere for the potential dilemma that they have face in their research, including those related to possibility of an accident or misuse of life science. Okay, they have installing positive ethics by regulation and code of conduct. So it must be offer transparency to be effective in the promoting of bioethics. The regulation, it will be by laws and policies of the institute, and we can measure it by some example of animal testing regulation. Specific regulation vary from country to country and from institute to institute. Codes of conduct, institutional, these may be involve punitive measure and beside that, behaviorally enforced and be regulated, and the opportunity of application to manage dual use research of concern for any misapplied pose to threat our public health and safety. A professional code of conduct are often classified by their goal. So it must be aspirational, it will be code of ethics, and if it's educational, it will be code of conduct, and if it's enforceable, it will be codes of practice. And sometimes it will be a combination of the previous three codes. The basic, how we can make the code of conduct effective by different ways. To be clearly stipulated goal, active language, and progressive, and appeal purely to altruistic impulse. And we will describe later how we can manage this to make it effective. Why it's effective? We have a lot of examples like Biological Weapon Convention, and in International Center of Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, they have mentioned and established different conduct of code to deal with biological agents and toxins, especially for dual use research of concern. How we can make it clearly stipulated, but to get our goal. Sometimes we will look for a goal, we'll have a chronological endpoint, to have some term adding it to make it active language like will, must, determine, progressive to current status to have ideal feature status, and focusing how the code can improve the state of affair, and appeals purely to illustrative impulse for the betterment of mankind, for the security of mankind, for future generation, and etc. The consideration of biological weapon convention and another committee, they look how did the feature of the international contact mentioned to help a global community to make it more effective by counter-proliferation, assisting developing nation, and both help to future generation to improve the global community. Codes of conduct. It's divided in two parts, national global community and individual. They will represent their institution, like establishing a guideline for ethical treatment of a human or animal, and sometimes for biosafety and biosecurity guideline, making some US review and a board like the National Science Advisory Board of Biosecurity, when it has established the FINC report and its recommendation to educate the researcher to avoid misapply of research related to biological agent and toxins. So, dual use traditional definition. If you return back to traditional definition, dual use can be used for both civil and military purpose. So it has bad side and getting benefit from the second side. But regarding to the National Security Advisory of for Biosecurity, it can be argued that virtually all life science research that has highest potential of misuse will be classified as dual use research of concern. So regarding to our understanding, it will be reasonably anticipated to provide information, knowledge, product, technology that could be directly misapplied to pose a threat to public health and safety, agricultural, crop and animal, and other plant, and to environmental. And we have mentioned before this definition in our seminar of dual use research of concern. And we have mentioned seven categories for different examples that classified for dual use research of concern. We have different examples for that, like vaccination research, studying antibiotic, and sometimes changing the virulence of pathogen for some drug intervention. Transmissibility or salts, host range of pathogen, how to change it, the information that's related to that, synthetic biology, do-it-yourself biology. So all of these categories will be concluded within intentional misuse and misapplied to pose a threat. This is an example of case study. We would like to teach you how you can highlight some point from the case study to identify your role as a researcher in bioethics to why if you have a case of dual use research. So this is a research lab taught about safety communication. In the next slide, you will find how we highlight from some sentences to identify there is a misuse and will be included within dual use research of concern. When you will study this case, you can identify researcher responsibility. the ethical responsibility for the researcher and the institutional ethical responsibility. And if there was a common situation in lab, how should we consider a protocol and how to manage and how we can deal in dual-use research in this situation present. As a researcher, it's your own responsibility because you know your research and you must know how to do risk assessment regarding to think report and looking for some mitigation process and how to communicate with another people in the institute that you have and the funding institute and how to engage your colleague with dual-use research of concern. Each individual, as we have mentioned, is responsible for their own behavior while you are doing research. If you can do no harm. If not, do good while you are minimizing the harm. It's our basic as a researcher. Each individual has a responsibility to report formally the address to their ethical viability to preserve the personal integrity and at the same time the integrity of your institute. Make address for ethical dilemma and to get the benefit from ethically conduct research. Each institution is responsible for ensuring a proper oversight and training to manage any dual-use research of concern, required to address any ethical dilemma and brought to attention for anyone who will work with such research. Finally, we need from researcher to know ethical conduct is an integrated part in any research and it will not represent only the personal integrity, it will represent the integrity of the institution. Bioethics, it's not a separated part of the research, it's an integrated task to all type of research. The basic for any researcher, while they are doing dual-use research of concern side, do no harm. It's important, but it will be critical to do good while you are minimizing harm. In the absence of legal concern, ethical conduct is still important to get the benefit of our population. By the end of this seminar, you will find cases of study and quizzes. So we would like you to participate by answering the question, and thanks a lot.